Hey everyone, this is Jim
And Charles
from Mellow Amps, and we're just about getting ready to assemble the top plate to the main PCB. Woohoo! But before we do that, it's time to do a little check over and make sure that we haven't got a problem somewhere that we can fix easily now. So let's start with polarity. So now I know when you installed all your components, you took the time to check, but we're going to check again. So we look for the band on the diodes and make sure they match the band on the board, and these alternate. They're not all on the same line. So this one alternates, this one's over here, this one's over here, and those all look good. What about capacitor polarity? Well, let's take a look and make sure. And we're going to check them all. So it's a little tough to get some of these darker images on camera, but you can see the polarity band on the printed board, and there's the band for the negative side, so that's good. The big caps are correct as well, and the little caps are actually facing the other direction, but you can clearly see the banding on the PCB, so we're good. So now we're going to go and we're going to look quickly at all of our solder pads and look for possible problems on both sides of the board. But oh ho, what do we see here? We've got an unsoldered pad and a partially soldered pad on this side of the board.
Yeah, I'll see if I can zoom in on that for people. So that's an example of something that you would catch before you do the install.
And we actually know what happened here. We put two resistors on the wrong, we swapped them on the wrong pads, and we had to.
It can happen to anyone.
Yep, it happened to us though. I'm taking the blame, even though Charles is supposed to be here keeping an eye on things. No, that's not fair.
So if you find a pad like that hasn't been flowed all the way through, technically it has a good connection already on the other side, but you can just come in and touch it up like everything else, and just make sure and guarantee that they aren't going to give you any trouble. There we go.
Yeah, so there's absolutely no reason why you can't come in and do a little rework wherever you see a problem. Everything else is looking really good, Charles. Who did all this soldering work? And we flip it over. Now, because we swapped some resistors around, I'm actually slightly nervous that maybe we goofed something up twice. So I can just see, if you tilt the board, you can see that this is right here, this is R7, and here's R6. So,
and you can also go back and look at earlier episodes with the bare board if you're not sure.
So let's have a peek here and see what they're supposed to be. So R6 is 470K and R7 is 200R or 200 ohms. So let's get the volt ohm meter going, and let's just get in there, and we're just going to, I don't know if you can see the meter on camera, maybe you can, if I don't get my fat wrist in the road, and we're just going to gently clip on here, or lightly clip on, and
there we go. So we're reading, yeah, around 484K.
Yep, and this is one of those resistor values that really doesn't matter that much as long as it's in the ballpark. Its center value is 470K, so that's fine. And then we'll switch.
Well, we should check the resistors that were actually problematic here. There we go.
Switch over to here and make sure that we're. Notice how it's in the meg ohm function right now.
Oh, sorry. It's not really on screen. Let's move this over a little if we can. There we go.
It takes a minute. The higher the value, the longer it takes for it to settle down. So 0.473 meg is 473 k ohm, right? Okay, everybody knew that. And let's just check the ones that are adjacent to it.
And that should be a much lower value, 200R.
And that's almost bang on. And those resistors need to have a tighter tolerance, and they do. And we're almost bang on here.
Perfect.
So that is 0.5%. So that's really very good. Okay, so now I'm feeling a little bit more confident that I didn't muck something up twice. Okay, let's get this thing installed. Okay, we were just getting ready to install everything, and I noticed that there's quite a nasty little tab poking out from the fuse. So I'm not going to snip it flush to the board. I'm going to snip it flush to the top of the solder blob, and I'm going to just hold my finger not in the clipper but over it, just to make sure I don't flip something up and into my eye, because this is a tricky little spot. I may as well do the other side while I'm doing it. There we go. Okay, just be careful with that. It probably would be smarter to come in with a little needle nose to do that instead of a finger. Okay, now, but the last thing you should do before you drop this onto the top plate, well, nobody's dropping, are they? They're going to gently lay it on, is to get in there and just make sure that there's no little nubbins hiding out, and there will be. Now, if you did a nice little thorough job cleaning, look what Charles did. It took you, 10 minutes?
Yeah.
10 minutes.
It's not perfect.
It's not perfect.
But it helps.
Okay, good. We're ready to go. Okay, so we're all set up to install the PCB onto the top plate. So set up like this.
And before we drop it on there, we have these little collars that need to go on over the RCA jacks. They should have a rough fiction fit, but they may be just a little bit loose. So just be careful they don't fall off. And these RCAs and the switches are all going to go through their respective holes. So you want to make sure everything gets lined up, and at the same time feed these wires through that central oval.
Yeah, and get your switch into both your switches into the center position, and this is probably a good job to get somebody to come in and give you a hand. So Charles is going to give me a hand.
I'm going to feed those wires through. You can do this on your own, but it's just a little more tricky. And we're going to get these back ones out of the way here. And so you want to make sure that you're fully down and seated, and these standoffs are pushing all the way through. So let's just pull everything through here. And sometimes it can take a little bit of a wiggle to get the sockets through. Let's see. There we go.
That sounded very satisfying. So now let's just tighten down the last 4 big standoffs. I'm just going to grab them here. So I would just put them on loosely until we get the rest of the top tightened down. But we've got to come back and tighten them up. Don't forget to do that. This is all part of the sandwich construction that I don't think we invented it, but you rarely see this on audio equipment designs.
It makes for a very strong build. All right, so now we want to make sure that this front portion is going to stay tied to that top plate.
So I'm just holding on to it.
Yeah, we're going to flip it over and give everything a quick visual check. The switch bodies should be just slightly poking out the top of the top plate here. Same with the tops of the sockets. They all look perfect, and we're going to grab our RCA collars and start snugging them down. Now these don't have to be on, clamped down super tight, torqued right in there, but they should be fairly snug.
And you should put these on finger tight. So once you've got them all on, just come along and just snug them down, go all the way around, snugging them down, then come back and snug them down a little bit more. And that's all there is to it.
All right, we'll see you back here in a second.
Okay, so the last thing to do as far as tightening things down is to get these 4 snugged down. And just remember that this is just a brass M3 screw, so just be careful you don't over torque it. Now, best practice when you're doing assembly is to do ground connections first. So, so let's do what is the shield between sections of the R-core transformer, and both sides of this lug are ground, but we'll bring this in on this side. Is that correct, Charles?
I'll double check. Yep, that's correct.
And just snug it down, and now you can just do a little tug test gently to see. And so over here, the blue wires are the high voltage secondary, and the black wire is the center tap ground for the filament wire, which is the white wire. So let's get the center tap in first. Now there's a nice little bit of extra wire here, and that is so that you can this is magnetic.
Let's do a little bend here. There we go.
So you can get a nice little bit of lead dress, so you can bend it back. And because you've prepped your blue junctions in advance, they're all ready to go to receive a wire.
We're blurry here. Can you try to move your hand down a little bit so people can see?
Will it come to focus?
All right, let's move over just there we go.
Yeah. If the camera doesn't have a field that is other than a perfectly flat bit of color.
It's also trying to focus on your hand right now.
Yeah, my hand is too high, so anyways.
I'll give you a closer look at it in a second once we get these in. So the blues go on either side of the black, on each side of the blue junction.
It doesn't matter which one goes on which outer junction, but they both go on an outside junction. That's really important.
And make sure they are seated fully. That is high voltage there. You don't want any exposed lead coming out that blue junction. We already trimmed them earlier, but it's always good to double check.
Yeah, we did a nice job tinning, and we've sized them so that they just drop in perfectly. That's why, you know, we take the time to do a little bit of prep, because it really pays off big time. Sorry for the blurry image, but okay, let's have a look.
Let's
there.
bring that up here.
There we go. Okay. Well, let's get the filament on.